بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى صدق الله فاتح. In the name of Allah, the All-Merciful, the Very Merciful. I swear by the dawn and the 10 nights, and by the even and the odd. Wrong surah. In the name of Allah, the All-Merciful. Pronounce the purity of the name of your most exalted Lord, who created everything, then made it well, and who determined a measure for everything, then guided it, and who brought forth pasturage, then turned it into a blackening stubble. We will make you recite, and then you will not forget, except that which Allah wills. Indeed, He knows what is manifest and what is hidden. And we will facilitate for you to reach the easiest way. So extend advice if advice is useful. The one who fears Allah will observe the advice, and it will be avoided by the most wretched one, who will enter the biggest fire. Then he will neither die therein nor live a desirable life. Success is surely achieved by him who purifies himself and pronounces the name of his Lord, then offers prayer. But you prefer the worldly life, while the hereafter is much better and much more durable. Indeed, this is written in the earlier scripts, the scripts of Ibrahim and Musa.
Thank you so much, Ali, for the recitation. It was beautiful in Arabic. I'm sure I put you on the spot to give the translation. You said that beautifully too. Thank you very much. Many of our topics that we have, they're all deliberately designed into themes. And we try to build on each theme as we go through the months and the years. It's very deliberate. And one of the themes that we have is fostering the community. And in that theme, we do community activities, for example, the Milad program, or social activities, or other types of things that build and foster that sense within our community. A very important aspect of this too is building our own sense of resilience, our own sense of development. And that's what this session this evening is all about. Imagine if we can all lift the status of our applications to universities, to jobs, and get higher positions. Over the years, that will have massive impacts on our community. And in a similar theme, thinking about, for example, how we manage our finances. And we are delighted to have with us today Frough, who has expertise in this, actually has a fascinating story in moving from one industry to another, which is both brave and inspiring. And it says, I think that's a lesson for us too, who are in work, who have jobs, that doesn't mean that this isn't important to us today. It's important for, I think, each and every one of us. And so what Frough is going to do is going to start with an overview and to share her skills about CV development. And after that, we can break up into different groups. And I suggest that we have one group for our youngsters in primary school, another group for our youngsters in secondary school, another one if anyone is thinking about university applications and or first jobs, and then another one for the older adults like me. Because something that is a blind spot for me and I don't have is a LinkedIn profile. And for people who, work for themselves or have their own businesses or need to amplify the type of work that they do, these things are so important to be able to develop careers. So I'm certainly really looking forward to this today. Please can you welcome Frough to the chair and give her a warm welcome. Thank you very much.
Assalamualaikum. Thank you very much for having me today. For those who don't know me, I'll give a brief introduction about myself. My name is Frough, by the way. Thank you. It's good. Yeah, it's fine. I am a senior management consultant and I work for Deloitte, which is one of the big fours, and it took me a while to get to this stage purely because I was exploring a lot of career paths, and it's quite a journey, to be honest with you. So to give you a bit of background about myself, I studied medical genetics for my bachelor's, and then I studied pathology for my master's. Then I went into bioinformatics. I worked for Public Health of England, realized that's the wrong career path for myself, and then I had to reevaluate what I wanted to do, reassigned my CVs, reassigned my life priorities, and then applied for a job in consulting. And that's where kind of my career changed and I took off. And I think this kind of helped quite a number of people, and I kind of want to inspire others to be able to change. Even if you're settled within your career path, which is exactly where I am right now, I'm very settled where I am, I'm still looking to change industries. And that's not a very difficult thing. A lot of the time people think that they're trapped in their career and they can't change, they can't move. However, there is that flexibility if you play it correctly and if you're able to. I'm by no means an expert in CV writing. I'm by no means an expert in, I'm not a career consultant in any way. But I think I kind of know the tricks because right now I do conduct a lot of interviews with everyone for my own industry, and I know what to look for in terms of CVs and in terms of interviews and personal profiles. And I think that would help people just to accelerate their own career path as well. So we're going to start a very, very brief introduction on how to write CV. I won't talk for too long. I think 5 or 10 minutes for the presentation, and then I've got an exercise to do, so we're going to split into groups, and that's when you can kind of grab me and ask me for questions, how to write the CV, so that should hopefully give you some form of practice, so when you go home, you're not going home empty-handed, you have something. I guess, got to do it here as well. So, introduction to CV, it's very, very important to write a succinct CV that's effective, because effectively your CV is your ticket to an interview. There was a time when I applied to a lot of jobs for a very long time and I wasn't getting any interviews. And that's when you know that the problem is your CV. So the importance of a good CV is that it highlights your skill set and it highlights you to be different from everyone else. And let's not forget that recruiters read a lot of CVs during the day. Every CV can look the same, and if you don't have the right skill sets, if you don't align with the careers that they're advertising online, then there's literally no point of sending your CV anywhere. So that's when you need to understand the employer's perspective. You need to shift your mindset of, what's coming up? Yeah, you need to shift your mindset of, you have this job in mind, but what do they look for instead of what skills do I offer? Because it's nice and great to look at the skills that you have. You may have a lot of things to offer, but then if the employer is asking for a specific skill sets that you don't have and you're not putting it on the CV and you're not highlighting that, then that's quite important, because you won't get anywhere without that at all in any way, shape or form. And it's primarily to showcase your qualifications and persuade employees and and that's your invitation to the interview effectively. So, you've got to summarize your life literally in 2 pages. Before you were allowed many more pages, but now it's 2 pages. And you need to be able to do that effectively in a succinct way that showcases that you're the right candidate for the job. And hopefully then you will know how to build your CV through key components. And those key components, they look at different bits. So, for example, first they look at your location. That's quite important. For you to be able to mention where you're located, it directly reflects your CV. So certain people have a salary higher than other people who do the exact same job purely because they're London-based and they get London weighting. And then the other person might be in Birmingham and they get Birmingham weight because that's less. So if you play that right and you mention on your CV you're London-based and you're still traveling into London, you're basically playing your cards right, is what I'm saying. The second part is basically your personal profile. We're going to run through that. And then your skill sets, and then we work through work experiences, and then we're going to work through miscellaneous or any extracurricular activities and qualifications that you may have. And these are the components that basically an employer looks for when they want to employ you. The one important thing to keep in mind is that your CV should not really be reflective of all work experience. It should scream that you're a very well-rounded person, because the last thing that they want is to employ somebody who's a workaholic and they burn out after 6 months. It's very expensive to employ someone. I can tell you from my experience, to onboard one person into a company, it costs around 30K. And it's even more expensive to replace them. But it happens. So, your contact information. You must have your name, surname, your email address. LinkedIn profile nowadays is very, very important. Make sure it's a shortened version, and I'm going to show you how. And you ensure, as I said before, you put your location in where you are, and make sure that you're reachable, i.e. your mobile number and your email address should all go onto the title. This is the first thing that they look for, because if you're not regional, if you're not within reachable distance, there's no point of them even offering you that job. So I guess from that perspective, you might want to think where you're applying to. And your personal profile, it's literally one paragraph of everything you've done. I know you've heard of, I don't know if you've heard of this quote where it says, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one. It takes time to build that personal profile. It's literally one paragraph of all of your experiences squashed in to say, I'm the best candidate that you have, and I'm going to be the person that's going to bring value to your company. And oftentimes, your personal profile is written in third person. So you talk about yourself as a third person. Like, if I were to write about myself, I'd say, Frough is an excellent candidate, right? You have to talk about yourself in an admiring way in order to convince someone else. I know that's a little bit tricky, but we can work through that. And your work experiences, they're done in reverse chronological order. So you start with your most recent one and you work your way through. Do not put any work experiences that may not be relevant, but you've just done it. There is too many things to read on a CV. Just make sure if you have one or two experiences, just highlight those and expand on those as much as possible. And make sure that you are able to articulate around those experiences as much as you can. And it has to be in a way that it showcases exactly where you've worked, what dates you've been in that job, and exactly what value you've brought. In this section, it's very, very important to follow the STAR format. Every bullet point should not exceed 2 lines. And you follow the STAR format from situation, task, action, and I think R is result, right? You don't have to go through that exact format, but what I do with my CV is state the situation or the problem, what was my mitigation, and the most important part, and I cannot emphasize on this, which is oftentimes missed by everyone, is the results or the value you bring to the company. So, for example, in a job, I've done a discrepancy report for financial services, and I found that X amount of money was missing. For example, the question is, so what? You've done this, so what? What's the value? And the value would then follow by I've saved the company, I don't know, 15 billion pounds, for example, right? It's exaggerated, but you follow that format and you'll be successful. So that's very, very important to keep in mind. The next section would be education and qualification, again, in reverse chronological order. The one that you're doing most recent is the most valuable one. I would say if you haven't done anything, if you're settled within your career and you haven't done anything in years and years and years and years, there's so many free courses online. Get yourself onto one. It's probably a week long, maybe a few hours long. It will still count towards your qualification. It will still count that you've been active, you're continuously developing yourself. And this is very important because when we do hire candidates into our own industry, we don't just hire for skill sets. Sometimes people don't have the skill sets. We hire for attitude. And if we see that somebody's take that upon themselves to upskill themselves, then that shows that they're quite ambitious and they're willing to learn new skills. So from that perspective, it's a win-win for both of you guys. Your skills and competencies, this goes right at the top, just after your personal profile. I will show you an example of my own CVs. I've got 2 CVs. One is a very simplified version, and the other one would be slightly more senior. In this section, you will highlight, and this is quite important for you to take the job description. This is where you need to tailor it. You take the job description, take out the key skills that they require, that the employees require, and you kind of bung that into your CV if it's relevant. And it has to be something that you can talk about and you've had experience in, and you kind of want to be able to demonstrate that those skill sets are relevant to the job. The other pointer that I can kind of give you in this section is very important because when you go through your interview stages, The first part is usually with a HR. Every industry is different, but in financial services, you go through with HR. It's usually a 5-stage interview. They've now shortened it to 3 stages. So you speak to the HR, and they kind of gauge where your skill sets are at, and then they kind of mention to you, we have so-and-so jobs, and recommend those jobs to you. If you, for example, have listed these skill sets and you have a job description in front of you, what is a bonus is, and the one thing that always wins, is that you can say, this matches my skill sets 90% of the time. And believe me, HR loves it, because then you can list it out on your CV and you say, these are the skill sets that I have, relevant to so-and-so experiences, and I feel like this job was made for me. And that will help you 100-folds, because that just shows excitement, and that just shows that you're relevant, and you know this was made for you genuinely. In terms of writing the CV, what are the do's and the don'ts? So for me, the biggest don't is don't use passive words. And I have collated some active words, which I think, are we giving them out? Oh, we'll put it up. We'll put it up. You need to be able to tailor your CV, absolutely. And you need to be able to emphasize your relevant skills and experiences. And it needs to be readable. I've had CVs that are pages and pages long, paragraphs long, and they just waffle. It needs to be succinct, and it needs to get to the point. And if you haven't done that in a while, you need to sit down and look at your bullet points or your experiences effectively, and how you can change that into a shorter version to get the message across. And this is literally by comparing the job description with your experiences and pulling out keywords and putting it in and saying, I've done this experience before, by demonstrating, you know, your experience. The don'ts. Don't use generic templates that you get online. There's some quirky ones out there, and they're a hell of a lot confusing when you read them. Don't do that. You don't need a fancy CV. All you need is a CV that showcases your skills, your name, your location, and you know, your experiences effectively. And it needs to be concise. I can't stress this enough, because we read a lot of CVs, and oftentimes in my industry, we're not recruitment consultants. We don't have time. This is side of desk stuff that we do. And when we do read CVs, it becomes tedious if we do read a lot. So make sure that it's short and sweet and to the point. Pet peeves, spelling mistakes. Huge pet peeve. I actually paid a CV company to do a CV recently for me. And it's shocking that this is their job, and they had American spelling within the CV instead of the Anglo-Saxon English. When you get to a certain seniority level, you notice these things. Everything has to be aligned. Everything needs to be popping into your face. And when you read these, it needs to flow, because you don't have time. And I'm not talking about my seniority. I'm nowhere near. I'm talking about director and above, because as you progress through your interview, the CV gets passed on. And if anyone within those stages don't like your CV, you're out. So you need to be able to, you know, have a very nice CV churned out to get you to the next stage. And you need to be able to customize this 100%. You can't use a generic CV. You can't just use one CV. One solution doesn't fit all. And, you know, I get that a lot. For example, a CV that was tailored to IT is now being sent to me for example, business operations. And I look at it and I'm just like, this doesn't really fit. You know, you didn't bother. Shows a bit of laziness. So absolutely make sure that you are able to tailor your CV to the industry and to the job role that you're applying for. It's not a very difficult task. Again, you refer back to the job description. You always will have an opportunity to speak to the HR. If you're not sure, My biggest advice is if you want to apply to somewhere that you don't have a job description for, you reach out to people who work there on LinkedIn. You will have, I would say 80% of the time, you will get an answer. I've had so many people who reached out to me on LinkedIn based on my industry and the place that I've worked at, and they've asked me several questions on how they can apply, and they're happy to answer. Don't be afraid to use people as your reference as well. Once you have a good CV, if you do go onto LinkedIn and you find someone in that industry, just ping your CV over to them. Don't be afraid of networking ever. That's the best way to get any job. Yeah, so moving on. So in terms of researching a role that you want to do, LinkedIn is probably your best friend. But I think that doesn't apply to all industries, because I think in medical, for example, or pharmaceuticals, or any other industry, you kind of need to apply directly, and you can't just network. Although networking does apply, but again, it goes back to that job description and the relevant websites. But agencies are your best friend as well. If you struggle to find any jobs, make sure you reach out to recruitment agents. There is no cost to you. It will cost the company, but if you do get recruited, you have a much higher percentage of being recruited than just passing your CV. I know that there is politics in the background sometimes. When you do apply to jobs, you won't get it because there's already a candidate in mind, and they don't normally say that because of equality, but recruitment agents do not dismiss that at all. So moving on, and in terms of research, I mean, from my industry, I can only talk about financial services, networking. I cannot stress this enough. Anything within the private sector, networking. So don't be afraid to reach out to strangers on LinkedIn at all. Even if you want to come out, I know my colleague who's a tier above me, he was a director he had his own business, so he was just a director. I don't know the depth of his business. He was recruited into Deloitte, and he changed industries purely because he did do that networking, and he sold his role really well. So this is what I mean. Do not be afraid to change industries or career paths, even if you are settled, because it's, again, effective to your transferable skills. And how you sell that transferable skills, the first and foremost, is through your CV. And you need to be able to demonstrate that. I think we've spoken about... Yeah, I think we've spoken about highlighting your relevant skills plenty, so we're going to skip this one. So in terms of including examples and achievements, you need to be able to back your claim, and this is where I mean follow the STAR approach. In every step of your CV, you need to be able to demonstrate what you did brought value. It's really not effective if you say, oh, I created so-and-so database for this company, and it's like, so what? Because one project manager from one company can be completely different to another project manager in another company. The definition is really like between earth and sky. And if you say, oh, I'm project managing in an IT company, that's completely different. The job role is completely different to what you would do in a financial services, although the soft skills still apply. But you really need to be able to follow that STAR approach and showcase the value that you brought to the company. Not only does that show that you cared for that company to do your job, but also the company valued you to retain you for a few years. And that's quite important. So, it just shows that credibility that you've had between yourself and that company as well. And also, like I said, you don't want to be a workaholic. You want to showcase that you're a well-rounded person. Nowadays, there's a lot of emphasis on social aspect around your careers. They don't want you to burn out after 6 months. So you need to be able to showcase that you have an active life outside of work. You're not just somebody who comes to work, goes home, doesn't do anything. You're given all these opportunities at work. If you're working for a corporate company, you're given opportunities to work with charities, you're given opportunities to volunteer, you're given opportunities to start your own initiative. You need to be able to showcase that, and that's quite important. It never used to be, but nowadays they look for people who are able to just be human outside of work, you know? That's quite important now, instead of just saying, oh, I have, you know, I can work, I can do all of this great stuff for you, and then I'm just going to die. It's not going to work. So I guess that's the end of my presentation. I've kept it really simple, but with the points that I've kind of raised, we can be able to now get into groups and do a practice session of how we're going to build the CV. We can do a few bullet points. So I'm going to come round. We can talk about, you know, how to write the CV. You're going to see the structure. Before we do that, actually, can I just get the active keywords on there, Sajjad, please? It's coming. Oh, it's very small. Yeah, so I've collated these active words. I know it's very small, but we'll try and circulate this after. What I mean by active words, because I was correcting someone's CV a while ago, and they were saying, using words like, I was involved in so-and-so team, and I said, okay, your involvement is just an involvement. You know, it's not very active. You're just saying you were part of the team. You could be sat in the back for all I know. You need to be able to use things like, you know, you've project managed, you've taken the initiative, you've actioned certain things, or you've devised a certain process. You need to be able to show that you have done it, rather than I was just involved. So that's quite passive. Never use the word involve. And these are some keywords that you can kind of steal from there and bung it in your CV. Say, you know, I've project managed something, rather than I was involved into something. It just sounds like someone else has done the work and you've just sat in the background as part of the team. So those are the active words. We're going to try and circulate that later. What I do want to do is an example of two of my CVs. Sajjad, could you just, yeah. Can we zoom in? So this is a CV that I've used to get into Accenture. This was just almost the beginning of my career in consulting. And as you can see, at the top, your name screams out. Then you have what you are. So I was a business analyst at that time. That was my speciality. And then you have all your relevant details. I've had to redact some of them, but you know, you've got your location, London. I had my address, you don't need your address. And then you put your number in, and your LinkedIn profile, as I said, is very important. All of that in one line. That just gives them the basic information. And then you have your personal profile. And your personal profile, if you read it, it's in third person. And it kind of talks about me, of how great I am for this role, and all of my relevant experiences. And then I've also put some core skills. I don't know if you guys noticed that. That highlights where my areas of expertise or my remit is. And if any recruitment consultant starts looking at that, the first thing that they're going to notice, I'm going to place this girl in business, operations, or project management. So they immediately know what job to offer you and what other people they need to reach out to, other industries that they need to reach out to get you that job. And then it's the career history. So can we scroll down a little bit? Thank you. You can see from every experience, it's mentioned where the location is. So I've worked at Capco, my job title, and then the date. Those are very important, all in one line. Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Bless. And then For each experience, I've put down just a few bullet points. You don't need to talk about your experience. I know sometimes you could be stuck in a place for years and years and years, but if you just follow just maybe 3 or 4 bullet points, again, succinct, to the point, what you did, what value you brought, then that kind of sells your CV really well. We're going to scroll down. I'm not going to talk too much about this. We're going to scroll down because this is a very basic CV. I've highlighted keywords. Do you see? Project managed, and I've got a merit in something apparently, and I've devised these tools, which is really great because they just pop. Can we go down a bit more? Then you have your professional qualifications. Now, in the professional qualifications, at some point I didn't know how to code. So as you can see, the Solo Learn is the Python and the HTML and the fundamentals for MySQL. Those are free courses online. It took me a day to do them, but it sold me. So there's a thing called continuous professional development. Every year you must have some form of achievement or qualification. In our industry, you're required by the industry to have 18 hours of studying per year, and we fulfill that. And those are mandatory courses that you have to do as well. For me, you can go, for anyone, if you don't know anything about the industry and you have some relevant work experience, you have transferable skills, and what you need to do is basically find yourself some courses online, either paid or funded or just free. Do them, because that just shows that you're willing to learn, and it shows that you're still ambitious and you're still, able to learn new skills. Can we go down? Thank you. And then we have the extracurricular activities. I obviously haven't done any volunteering since 2017. It still stays there. But it shows that I'm a very well-rounded person. So I've just put in 4 projects that I've done, that I've been involved in, and that just shows that when I come to the company, I'm not just going to be working, I'm going to do something for the company. So right now, because of my industries, financial services, predominantly white male. Being a female is already hard, being a Muslim female is harder. And I don't go out to drinking because that's their culture. So what I've done is spoke to the director, and we have Thursday breakfasts. And that's quite nice. It's brought all the Muslims together. We have breakfast together instead of going out for drinks. And now the company thinks I'm bringing value to the company, even though it's for myself, right? But you need to be able to do initiatives like that to show that, you care for the company as well. And that's where your extracurricular activities come from. You never put reference in. Never, because your references can change. Just say available upon request and leave it at that. They will ask you who they can reach out to. Oftentimes, they find the place that you worked for and they ask for a reference in the background anyway, so you don't need to put references in there. Just ignore that part. So that's a basic CV. Can we flick to my recent, 2 years ago, I think, I wrote another one. This is the one that got me into Deloitte. And again, it follows the same format, but the language has now changed, right? So you've seen a basic one of what I've done, the value that I've brought. That was the basic introduction of what a CV should look like. When you get to a mid-senior level, your job role changes. When you're in any industry, when you're at the bottom of the food chain, respectfully, you do the work. When you come to a mid-senior level, you learn management in any industry. So your language should change from I have done this to I have managed projects for a mid-senior level. And the next job role that I'll be applying for will be leadership. So the hierarchy is I did this, then I managed, then I led. And that's how you move up, right? And this is more of a management style. The language changes. You still use active words, but because now I've fallen into a role that I need to manage several teams and I have more responsibility, the language kind of changes. Happy to share those CVs. I have 2 other examples. Can we get Patel, please? Yeah, so this is Mr. Patel. He's a bit more senior than I am. This is a real CV. And he's been in financial services for a very long time. And again, as you can see, now he's followed the same format, irrespective of the seniority level. You still have your name, your location, your details. I've had to redact those out. And then you have your personal profile, your skills. He's elaborated a little bit more on his skills, and he's categorized them, what he's good at, what he's strong at, whether they're soft skills or technical skills. And then he's gone into employment. Can you scroll a little bit, just to showcase? This one's a bit more lengthy because obviously the projects are much more complex, and he's far more senior than I am, but it follows the same format. But it's not a fancy thing. It's not a fancy format. You can do this in Word. We haven't stolen any formats, and he doesn't know me and I don't know him. But we followed the same, as you can see. Again, industry, the job title, the date, and then every other experience. Can you scroll down? Let's see what he's done. More. So again, the skills are down there, but then he's put his education in the exact same format. This is a very long CV. Go down. And then he has his interests. So he's gone into charity, sports, and other interests in his LinkedIn profile. There's no reference either. So this is what a CV would look like when you're at, I think, a director level. I have another one. I think, can we get Zaman up? So this one, also almost a bit more senior than a director. And as you can see, it changes. Now, I don't think anyone, if you want to change, this is the format that you need to kind of, if you're in a senior role, if you're already settled in your career and you want to change, this is the format that you need to kind of utilize. And it's kind of overview, 9 years of working experience. Again, it's personal profile, but it's just written a bit more in a succinct way, and it's been split. And then it has relevant qualifications and areas of expertise, which is, again, skill sets. So it follows the same format, but it's just written a bit different because it's at a very high level. They no longer want to see what you've done. It's the values that you bring as a person. Can we go down a bit more? Yeah, and they're not really interested on the bullet points anymore because you've already showcased, you've already reached that place. So you just put everything as experience, and you don't need to elaborate much more. Very high level. Go down a bit more. Some experience. Oh, responsibilities and achievements. So yeah, this person has done a lot. Can we go down? Yeah, Accenture, PwC, UBS. So this person has done a lot. We go down. This is a very long CV as well. I don't think that bit is relevant anymore. You don't need to split it like that, but you come back to academic background, again in the exact same format that's been written, and reference available upon request. So those are a few CVs that you guys can kind of take away. Please be mindful when sharing it, because these are genuine CVs, but we do try and circulate it. I think we're going to try and split into groups now and do some exercise with writing CVs. We've put a format together, so I'll pass on. Thank you so much.